Hello, and welcome to 7 Tips in 7 Days. My name is Candace Whitman, and I am the owner of Wild Moon Counseling. This 7 Tips in 7 Days is 7 need to know tips for adults recovering from the impacts of an unhealthy, abusive, or neglectful childhood. In this video today, we're going to talk a bit about what often happens as a result of having such an unhealthy childhood experience. We'll also explore an understanding of trauma and what it means to have experienced complex trauma. Then, over the next 7 days, you'll receive a new video with tips to help you start recovering from your childhood experiences. Growing up in an unhealthy, abusive, or neglectful environment can have lifelong impacts. Childhood is your time for your brain and your body to develop. You learn tremendous amounts from the people and the environment around you. And those people and environments significantly impact your developing brain. It is during early childhood that you learn to understand your experiences and emotions and what to do with those emotions. Without a caretaker to teach you what you are experiencing or what to do about it, you never learn how to self-soothe or even trust your own experiences. When this happens, a part of your brain kicks into overdrive to keep you safe and help you survive. You stay in this survival mode where you are hyper-focused on staying safe. This significantly impacts your ability to think clearly, to relate to others, or to communicate effectively, among many other things. When you're unconsciously operating in survival mode, this can lead to unhealthy relationship patterns, feeling like you can't control your emotions, making decisions that you regret, feeling like there's something wrong with you, etc. There are many symptoms associated with growing up in unhealthy environments, and we'll explore more of these symptoms over the next week and what you can do to combat them. So, what is trauma? You may be wondering yourself if perhaps your childhood was traumatic and you never realized it. Even as a trained therapist, I never realized my childhood could be labeled as traumatic until one of my therapists diagnosed me with PTSD about 5 years ago. Trauma is not as specific as we often think. You don't have to be a soldier or experience some big awful event. In fact, most people who grew up in unhealthy homes have experienced trauma. But before I can explain trauma, I want to say a little bit about what happens when we experience a healthy stress response. When our brain senses that we are in danger, regardless if it is physical danger or psychological danger, it sends a signal to our body to release stress hormones. Stress hormones, such as cortisol and adrenaline, help us to become alert, on edge, and prepared to go into fight or flight mode. As a result, our heart rate increases, our breathing becomes shallow and rapid, and our muscles become tense. Once we realize that we are no longer in danger, the body stops releasing the stress hormones and we go back to normal. Trauma happens when we continue to experience the stress response even when the threat is gone. For whatever reason, our brain and our body have a difficult time recognizing that we are safe again. So essentially, trauma is the experience of being in stress mode longer than necessary. PTSD, or post traumatic stress disorder, is the result of extended periods of experiencing a stress response after the threat is gone. So, what is complex PTSD or CPTSD? When a person experiences a second event that feels like a threat before they can recover from the first, it is called complex trauma. Complex trauma is the stacking of one trauma on top of another without time to reset back to normal between events. Children who grew up in unhealthy homes often experience complex trauma over and over again. For these children, complex trauma is all they know. Therefore, they believe it is just life and how they function. As they grow, however, they often notice that how they go through life doesn't quite match how others live, and they begin to notice that there's something wrong with how they are responding. So, why does all of this matter? Chances are, if you grew up in an unhealthy, abusive, or neglectful childhood, you were likely still experiencing the impacts of that. You very well may even be suffering from the effects of complex PTSD. Because you've always lived with it, you may not have realized that your symptoms are results of you trying to survive, as opposed to thinking you were born with something wrong with you. Way too many people are diagnosed with all kinds of things, like bipolar disorder or borderline personality disorder, when in reality, they are really just experiencing complex PTSD. So, regardless if you have CPTSD or not, my hope is that if you grew up in an unhealthy, abusive, or neglectful childhood, this lesson and the lessons over the next week will help you to see that you're not inherently broken. My hope is that you'll see that your symptoms are a result of trying to survive. So, over the next 7 days, I'll send you an email just like this one with videos of how to take care of yourself and make life a little easier if you're continuing to feel the impacts of your childhood today. Over the next 7 days, I'll introduce tips for overcoming childhood trauma, and you'll learn to calm the part of your brain that believes you're in danger. You'll learn to create a feeling of safety so you can stop operating in survival mode all of the time. You'll discover techniques to feel grounded and centered. You'll explore how mindfulness can shift major aspects of your well being. We'll talk about developing a safety net of self care and how to become in tune with your needs. And finally, how to evaluate how to build a support system that helps you long term. Thanks so much for tuning in to 7 Tips in 7 Days. Again, my name is Candace Whitman, and I'm the owner of Wild Moon Counseling. If you have any questions, you can send me an email at candace@wildmooncounseling.com. Have a great evening and stay tuned for tomorrow's lesson.